Impacts of social networking on organizational leadership. We appreciate you joining us, and we are excited to present this event featuring Jocelyn Pinet, international author, speaker, and consultant. Jocelyn works with Technomedia and our clients to help bring vision and thought leadership around social media's influence and the critical connection it plays in HR technology and talent management. I'm Shauna Berthold, VP of Marketing at Technomedia, and I'll be your moderator for our event today. First, some quick housekeeping items. You can ask us questions at any point by typing them into the questions pod in the GoToWebinar control panel on your desktop. We'll be taking questions at the end of Jocelyn's presentation. Time permitting, we'll get to all of them, but if not, we'll definitely follow up with you directly. Also, those interested in receiving a copy of today's presentation, we'll be sharing some contact information for you at the conclusion of the webinar, so we can get that out to you if you're interested. We'll also be doing a posting of the recording of the session on our website shortly. For those of you who are not familiar with Technomedia, Technomedia is a talent management suite provider. We offer a suite solution and have been doing that since 1996. We provide clients standalone best-of-breed solutions also as well, and performance management, succession planning, compensation management, and learning and development, along with talent acquisition. We currently have around 400 clients in over 70 countries, and our solution is best suited for companies with over 3,000 employees. So that's information about Technomedia. Let me give you a little bit more information about our speaker today. Since 1986, Jocelyn Pinet has been helping organizations gather stakeholders around common visions, goals, and strategies. He creates and facilitates seminars, trainings, and conferences to help participants understand the challenges they are faced with and finding ways to meet them. Recognized for his ability to turn words and concepts into powerful images and for his dynamic, interactive, and pragmatic approach, he has facilitated hundreds of events around the world in both English and French, with groups ranging from 20 to 2,000 people, and working in all types of industries, including those from tire makers to global bankers. Jocelyn uses creative methods and innovative facilitation tools designed to put participants' intelligence and experience to work, making their meetings a powerful experience that has a strong impact on their future actions and those of their organization. Jocelyn's webinar today will focus on what role you can play and how your organization can leap to the forefront of this social media transformation. Welcome, Jocelyn. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Shauna. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon, whatever part of the world you're in today. I have about 45 minutes to try to illustrate with you how social media is impacting leadership in ways that are going to change our businesses forever. And let me start with an affirmation. I believe that from the dorm room to the boardroom, social networks have become a transformational vector of traditional leadership. They are literally changing the way that organizations will be led today, but in the future. And I have a little issue with my phone right now. Let me just change phones for a second here. All right, there we go. So that said, let's look at what are some of the facts about social media. If you look at Facebook, which was created in 2004, that's only 9 years ago, that was the first big social network. In terms of worldwide reach, social networking overtook email, and we know the impact email had in our businesses, changed the way we communicated with each other. Social networking overtook email in 2008. So the number of users using social networking as a tool years ago changed. So let's look at what's actually happening every minute of every day. And remember, there's 1,440 minutes in every day. 100,000 every minute of every day. 100,000 tweets are sent. 684,478 pieces of content are posted on Facebook. Again, every minute of every day. 60 hours of video are uploaded on YouTube. 60 new users join LinkedIn. By the way, these logos, you know, most of them you didn't know a few years ago. These I just don't even need to say the names right now. You know what they are. So that's a lot of content on social media and social networking making possible. Let's look at Facebook a little bit more in depth for a second here. Facebook every day has 552 million active users. 50% of every smartphone in the world is connected to Facebook every hour. There's 140 billion friends connections every day. There's 1 out of every 7 minutes online. So people spend 7 minutes online. 1 of them will be on Facebook. And Facebook every day has 10.5 billion minutes a day of use. That's 20,000 years. Imagine, that's an incredible amount of content, of information, of exchanges that's happening on Facebook. Facebook is now, on 2012, is a business of $5.1 billion U.S. of income. It's part of the Fortune 500 companies. That's for a company that was created 9 years ago or so. So that's Facebook. Maybe we can give a look at more of a business network, which is LinkedIn. I believe that most of you, if you're not on LinkedIn, you should be. LinkedIn is probably, for most people, 61% of the business people claim it as their professional networking site. 81% of them belong to at least one group, so one networking group on LinkedIn, a large majority, and it's 25 million daily active users. So, I mean, these are popular networks, LinkedIn, Facebook. You might be familiar with Yammer also. Yammer is a site that, we'll see that in a second, but enables companies and people in companies actually to interact with each other in a very easy way. Over 200,000 companies worldwide use Yammer. 80% of the Fortune 500 companies do. A study that Yammer did a couple of years ago, 83% of Yammer users felt to be better connected with their teams. This is a simple tool to use, and it's now part of Microsoft Office. So that tool will be made available just as Word and PowerPoint and Excel is in our organizations. So for all of you out there who are in human resources, and I believe that's most of us on this conference right now, the tools you've been trying to implement in your organizations, the networking tools, the resume that you try to get from people, the connecting together, all of that will be made completely obsolete by Yammer. Here's what they say on their website. Yammer is a secure, private social network for your company. It empowers employees to be more productive and successful by enabling them to collaborate easily, make smarter decisions faster, and self-organize into teams to take on any business challenge. Now, if that doesn't change our world, I wonder what will. Again, remember, part of Microsoft Office, so as easy to use as PowerPoint or Word is, and will become, as Microsoft makes it even more available to people and more and advertise it more, a tool that will once again change our world as email did and as other tools did. Now, we've looked at some of these large social networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Yammer. Let's look at a few facts now of what the world looks like with social networks. You and I, we interact with our mobiles on average 40, 80 times a day. I don't know about you, but sometimes it's more like 100 times a day for me. 91% of mobile internet. Now, that's a new twist also. We used to be attached to our computers, to a desk, to a room. Now we work with mobiles. And 91% of mobile internet is on social activities. We'll see that a bit more in a second. 161 million minutes per month is spent with social media. Close to 50% of businesses claim to have a formalized process of collective intelligence, of getting people together and working together in a formal way. Last June, now this is interesting news, Morgan Stanley and its 18,000 advisors entered the Twitter sphere. Now, every tweet is a potential lawsuit because they are as attached to the security and commission laws that any other organization in their field is. So whatever they say out there is a potential lawsuit. So 18,000 people right now are on Twitter with Morgan Stanley, enable them to communicate opinions, points of views, exchange with people. So when companies of that nature get on these social networks, we know something has changed. The Harvard Business Review did a survey of 2,100 companies recently, and 79% of them plan to use social media. So they're not using it yet. Some companies are, but 12% of those are saying to be using it effectively. So we are on the beginning of this transformation. We don't really know how to use it well yet. We are starting to see some of the difficulties, but also some of the potential that exists in social media. And we are grasping with how do we make this work in organizations, and what does that change? And the purpose of this conference to me is to illustrate how fundamental all of these tools will change the way organizations are managed, the way organizations are led, and there's fundamental reason why this is not just a fad, but a transformation in the way organizations will be managed in the future. So, we know that organizations are interested in Facebook and social network, but let's look at some of the impacts. On this slide here, I want to show you, if you look at the top right corner, where social media resides. First of all, it's a very public thing, as you know, and it's extremely participative. That's why it works. It's not time-bound. People can be there whenever they want and say almost whatever they want to say. The added value is brought by all, so the information that's there is usable by everyone, brought by everyone, and reusable also. So the intelligence of the collectivity is really put to contribution and grows ideas. So from there, we know that the interaction between people is what people are looking for, but not only just to talk, but also to exchange ideas and develop their own intelligence and knowledge about certain topics. We know that Facebook can be very light. Some other networks are much more serious if we look at what's the content of the exchanges. So it's also interesting to look at what's been happening with businesses in social media. And this next slide, obviously complicated, but it illustrates the acquisitions in the last 4 years by large firms, the IBMs, the Microsoft, the Oracles of this world, the SAPs. And these are all the little ones that you see are all acquisitions that feature social media as a major component. So you can see that a lot of things have been happening over the years when companies such as IBM and Microsoft buy out these smaller social networking companies. Again, we know that something's happening. So why does it work? Well, let's look at what is a social network. We talk about it, but a social network fundamentally allows a dyadic relationship between a minimum of two people, a couple, allows a dyadic relationship between people who share common interests. And we measure the strength of a dyad by the time individuals spend together, as well as on the emotional intensity of their relationship. That sounds like a concept. Let me illustrate it with a picture. I believe it's worth 1,000 words. So you got these 4 kids there sitting on this park bench, each with their phone, obviously not talking to their mothers, I assume, but with their friends. This is an emotional bond. This is spending time with a tool that has a real grasp in you. It really touches you. It really anchors your exchange. And you can see the intensity of these kids' faces. They're really with their, we could say with their phones, but they're with their contacts. They're with their network. And these guys, that's your workforce of the future. These are the ones that will be in your companies and, what are they, 15, 16? They'll be there in 5, 6, 7 years. So these are the people that you'll be working with in a very short time. Social media for them is a fundamental aspect of their lives. Why? Well, let's look at a few keywords that define social networks. Generosity, it's free, you have autonomy, it's interesting. There's no hierarchy, you can be who you want. Expertise can be exchanged, you're visible, but also you can be anonymous. There's this sense of being individual, that you're there and you can make a difference. There's some kind of trust involved, motivation, transparency, innovation, creativity. It's accessible. You can share things. You're acknowledged also when you make a contribution. It's you get a sense of empowerment because you get feedback from people on what you've posted, for example. It's a place to have a presence, to express, to connect. It's immediate. We live in this world of immediacy, of things being done right away and having a result right away. It's easy, and it's a place for discovery. That touches a lot of our personal needs, especially with younger generations who have been born in this world. I have a son who's 16 almost now. He didn't have to learn social networks. He was born in a world where it was there already. We have to learn that, you and I. I assume you're of a certain age, in your 30s or more. We have to learn that. We have to discover it. My wife recently erased all of her contacts on her thing by pressing the wrong button. Who do you think she asked to put them back? My 16-year-old. It's natural for them. Now, it fulfills 3 fundamental needs that drive intrinsic behavior. In human resources, we're looking for the motivational factors that are not extrinsic, outside of the person, but really within the person. And social networking fulfills three of the fundamental needs we have. One of them is feeling competent. I have a sense that what I do works, that I know what I'm doing, that I have some control and some ability of making things happen. I also have autonomy. I can do it when I want, with what I want, with whom I want, at any time. And third, I'm socially connected. I'm with people. And these are three fundamental needs that drive intrinsic motivation. You and I, don't take my word for it, just look within yourself. What makes you feel motivated to do something? It's when you have the feeling of being competent. You know what you're doing. You feel that you have autonomy. You're not controlled by, or too much controlled by external forces. And you're connected with people. You're doing it with other people. So it has impacts. It touches us in our fundamental needs. Here's a little cartoon that I found of this dad asking his daughter, "How, sweetie, how was school today?" And she says, "You can read all about it in my blog, Dad." To me, she embodies what social networks are about, this competence, this autonomy, this connectedness. That's this, well, in just one sentence, she says it all. But we've looked at, a big picture of social networking and social media in general, but how does this affect organizations? And more importantly, how does it affect organizational leadership? Well, I like to bring Jack Welch back up because he said something that I liked years ago when he was at GE. He said, when the speed of external change is greater than the speed of internal change, the organization is at risk. Simply said, when it's moving faster out there than inside, you've got a problem. And we live in a complex world. This is a picture I took in Germany. I don't remember what town, but I don't know about you guys, but in America, I had never seen a sign like this. Green arrow, I could understand. Bicycles, I could, green and red, I could get. But the, horizontal lines, this yellow triangle, what is that? What am I doing? I was in the right lane. I figured the best thing I can do here that seemed the safest is to turn right, which was not the way I wanted to go. But I turned right, and I stopped, and I took this picture. What I find, this is a good metaphor, a good analogy for the world in which we live today. And if I ask you, do you think our world is moving faster today than it moved 15 years ago? I mean, you're not there to answer me right now, but I know in your heads, yeah, it is. Our world is moving certainly faster than it did 15 years ago. And if we, project ourselves in the future, I believe that it's going to move even faster. And, although we don't like to consider that, we certainly, all kinds of indicators are showing us that there's an acceleration. So, to me, this is an analogy of the world we live in. A lot of information that come to us simultaneously. We're kind of bombarded by it. And we have to make decisions on this information without always knowing the consequences. And so the speed and the complexity of information is one of the things we're working with, and we have to, you and I, we have to deal with it. There's a second image I'd like to show you, is this one. It's a jet that's breaking the sound barrier. It's a spectacular photo. But besides the fact that it's a great picture, something is interesting about this picture. If you're an engineer in the field of aeronauticals, you can, by computer, I'm looking for the English word here, but project the way air flows over the airplane. It's something that you know. It's something that's important to know because it obviously the flow of the air is important to the flight of the jet. What happens when a plane breaks the sound barrier is that it's completely unpredictable. There's no models anymore. They cannot predict how air flows over an airplane. And to me, once again, that's a good analogy for the world in which we live. Speed brings a lot of unpredictability. Things change without any, or rarely, without a lot of warning signs. And so, first, a lot of information, complex to deal with, and the speed that makes it unpredictable. How will this information gather together and produce results that we didn't know? Who would have predicted, the crisis of 2008? Very few people saw that coming. It's the world in which we live, complex and fast. And so I'd like to show you another picture that, to me, illustrates where we're at this point. These are horses carrying gasoline tanks. It's obviously at the end of the last century or the beginning of the last century, the 1900s. And these horses don't know it, but they're they're running to their end. automobile was invented, but obviously horses had been around for thousands of years. They had served mankind and still were at the time that picture was taken. And if you had opened your window on the street at that time, all you would have seen in the streets are horses. Cars were stinky things that got stuck in dirt roads because obviously nothing was paved back then. And it was something that people couldn't see was going to transform our world. When Henry Ford was looking for financing for his assembly lines, the president of the Michigan Saving Banks told him that horses were there to stay and cars were a nice gadget that would disappear. I don't know how many of you came by horse this morning to work, but definitely cars are there to stay. Whether they're there to stay or not, I don't know, but they're certainly there right now. And so this picture, to me, is a picture of a world, of a rupture in our world. Automobiles are being invented, but they don't look like they're going to change the world. 30 years after that picture was taken, the world had changed. Automobiles had replaced horses, and they gave way to a complete transformation of how society organized itself. You could travel. You could go to other places easily. You could have suburbs and shopping centers and malls, and all of that was made possible by the invention of automobiles. It completely transformed the way society was organized and how we lived. And so what I'm trying to do today, and that's part of my job, is to try to find out what's the equivalent of this picture in our world today. What is it that are indicators of a rupture? Horses carrying gasoline tanks. A rupture in our world, something there was a before and then there's an after. And so through this conference, what I'd like to show you is some of my observations of what's happening in our world and social networking and the impact it has on organizational leadership. And I believe that there's a gap, and when there's a gap, we have to jump. This is not an incremental change. It's something that there's literally a before and after. And this is not just about technology. Technology is just a tool. It's the technology that changes what we do, how we do it, what we can do, and the context in which we do it. That changes. And so what are we jumping from? There's a rupture from what to where? Well, let's look at traditional leadership. What was leadership traditionally? It was based on what I call the 4 C's, contract, constraint, control, and conform. If you work with an organization, not so long ago, but traditional leadership is based on that. You had a contract. Whether it was signed or not is irrelevant. You had an agreement on what your job was. You were supposed to do this. That was the contract. That was what you were hired for. And management controlled that. On an assembly line, it was easy to control what you did. You put a hole in the board. You put the bolt through it. You put the nut at the other end. Somebody else screwed both together. Somebody took them out. Easy to measure. And that's basically our modern take on management was, and you're probably familiar with Taylor and Taylorism, break down the parts of an organization as little parts as possible, control and manage that, and you have an efficient organization. So people work under constraint. We don't want them to do something else. We're not looking for their brains. We're looking, people are machines in that kind of organization. They're working under constraint. And conformity is what we're looking for. Everything the same. Assembly lines. People are machines. Again, not looking for ideas, not looking for brains. And if you look at what you're managing today, it's far from that. In that world of traditional leadership, these guys that you see here are machines. They're just extra arms and hands to assist the machines. I live in a village in Quebec City, or close to Quebec City, and there's a paper mill. And so these guys who are there, these 2 workers, are not hired for their intelligence. They're hired because we need them to move things around, to put things in machines, that's all we need from them. And so it worked well, that kind of traditional leadership in that kind of organization. But again, as I said a minute ago, if you look at what you're managing today, that's not it at all. You're managing what? Intelligence, creativity, relationships, ability to make decisions. You're not supervising your staff and controlling every phone call and every line they make. You trust that they're going to do the right thing. You trust that they make the right phone calls. Just look at your own jobs. What do you do in a day? You talk to people, you exchange ideas, you produce things. I believe that what management is there to do is to make things happen that have not yet happened. So it's putting intelligence to contribution. So in that management style, we had a certain kind of organization and leadership, and the way we learn leadership and the way we've managed organizations in the past was built on those 4 C's. Now, that gives way to, well, interesting reactions from people. Here's a study that was done by Gallup a few years ago. Now, Gallup, I know you know this organization, has done 30 years of studies in behavioral economy. That's 17 million employees surveyed on 12 key criteria. I'm not going to go into them right now, but it's interesting what they came up with. 29% of these employees, now 17 million employees that were surveyed again, 29% said they were actively involved in their organization. You can count on these guys to get the job done. Now, you can possibly figure the next number here. 54%, more than half, say they're not involved. It's not that they've got a problem with the organization. They get the job done. You know, they're working. They come in the morning. They do their work. They go in at night, and that's the end of the story. But you can see me coming. The next number, 17%, almost one of the five, say they're actively disinvolved. Now, what does an actively disinvolved person do? Yeah, those guys. You know, you have possibly some people in your head right now. They break as much as they can your projects, your ideas. They oppose things. They sabotage sometimes. They try to get the 54% not involved on their side. That's their way of taking power. So don't take those numbers for granted. Just look in your own environment, people you work with, the staff, not necessarily your close colleagues, but the staff in general in your organization. It probably looks a little bit like that. A third, actively involved. These people, you can really count on them. You know that they're going to get the job done no matter what. They're your real, true, troopers. Half of them, more or less involved. They're there, but and then 1 out of 5, these people, you have issues with. So that's the outcome of the style of management we've been using. People don't feel that organizations give them a real sense, a real true purpose. The leadership and the management of organizations has not yet, for most organizations, giving us a true sense of accomplishment, of making a difference, of feeling involved, of those senses that you feel competent, you have autonomy, you're socially connected with people. That's not what most organizations give us. And so I'll share with you a little story with Einstein that, to me, illustrates what's happening right now. You may know that Einstein was also a university, I say also because he's known for his research, but also a university teacher. And if you were a student of Einstein, obviously you were, first of all, a very good student, and people followed Einstein as a teacher for years, so they were in his classes for many years. And this is a true story of Einstein one day passing an exam to his students. Now, his classrooms are big auditoriums, and you can figure, 250 students in a room. And Einstein passes out this exam and goes back to his desk, and there's a lot of whispering in the class. People are, so he says, "What's going on, ladies and gentlemen?" And some student, one braver than the other, said, "Mr. Einstein, we're, looking at this exam you just gave us. We're, comparing this, and when we're looking at it, we realize this is the same exam as last year. It's exactly the same thing, same question, same copy, same everything. And we're surprised coming from you that, you give us the same questions." And Einstein said, "Oh, no, you're absolutely right. No, you're right. This year the questions are the same, but the answers are different." And so I think that's the world in which we live. The questions we're asking right now, how do we get people to work better together? How do we become more profitable? How do we give more meaning to our organizations and people? These are old questions. But the way we need to answer them today has changed fundamentally. And so leadership, and I make a distinction here between management. You can be a good manager and a bad leader, and you can be a good leader and a bad manager. But leadership here, and that includes managers as good leaders, has the impact, as we saw, on organizations. And you and I are trying to figure out what is leadership today, and that not a week goes by without us finding or reading an article, magazine, seeing something about leadership, questioning it. Hundreds, if not thousands, of books have been writing on the topic. I did a little research on Google. Now, recently, that changes obviously every day, but if you look up the word leaders, you have 500 million results. Leadership, 420 million results. Leadership definition, 4.1 million results. That's a lot. It's not all valid, obviously. We've all been on Google, but it's a lot of trying to figure out what's leadership. What are we doing? What does it mean to be a leader today, and what's required? And so in organizations, not only are we as management asking those questions, but so is our staff. I work with many organizations, as Shauna was saying, and I often work with high potentials, people who are, seen as the leaders in growth. And this young woman came to me one day and said, Jocelyn, it's not her, but about that age, and you're young, late 20s, early 30s maybe. I know the organization makes it clear what it expects from me. I know what they want, but what does it do for me? Why am I working here? They give me a good pay, fine. But what does it do for me? How does it contribute to not only my well-being, but my growth, my intelligence, my development? What does it do for me? Why should I work for them? And these are questions that were never asked before in organizations. So it requires a different kind of leadership to answer that kind of question. And I believe that what we're seeing right now is an emerging kind of leadership. So if you recall it before, the 4 C's on control, contract, conformity, we're now looking at a leadership that needs to be based on 4 different things. I haven't found words that all match with the beginning same letter, but it's based on trust. And look at around you. You have to trust the people you work with, that they'll get the job done, that they'll do their thing, that if you give them an objective, they'll work towards reaching it. What they require from you, though, in exchange is support. Help me, support me, give me tools, give me education, give me trainings, give me an environment that makes it possible for me to excel at my job. Give me some challenges also. Set me objectives that will help me grow and that will develop me, that will push me in that direction. And finally, it's based on self-discipline, that people discipline themselves. You don't have to control them anymore. I'm sure most of you don't punch, if not all of you. Nobody punches in the morning, with a punch card. You might do for some, reasons, but most of us don't anymore. It's a form of management that's all but disappeared because we trust that people come in when they need to come in and leave when they need to leave because they get the job done. And so it's changing. And again, this is emerging leadership. If all organizations were like that, we'd have a different talk right now. But we see that the kind of leaders we're looking for are the leaders that work with us with those criteria: trust, support, challenge, self-discipline. That doesn't mean that there's no control. Don't get me wrong here. It doesn't mean that there's no control. It's not a and/or thing. It's not a or this, but it's a and this. Because, trusting and supporting doesn't mean not controlling. But it's not controlling the person. It's controlling the results. So that said, let's look at what's changed in history and why is this transformation that's been happening for the last 30 years or so is once again a fundamental shift in the way society is being organized. And we'll go back a long time from now. We'll go back to 3 million years ago, where basically the form of the economy was hunting, gathering. We had small teams of people moving around together and doing things in community. The leadership there was very situational. If you were the good hunter for, I don't know, a tiger, you were the leader of that team. If you were the good fisherman, you were the leader of that team. You became the leader. If you were the good bow maker, whatever, leadership was very situational. Depending on the circumstances, the right leader would show up at that moment. That would be that person. Obviously, times evolved, and 300,000 years ago. Now, obviously, this is not cut, by a knife in time, but roughly 300,000 years ago, a new economy started to take place, farming and herding. People became sedentary. They stayed in places. They built houses. And leadership then was inherited. You took it from someone if you wanted it. You went to war if you wanted to become the leader of a country or of a land. Or you were born into nobility. Or you were the daughter or the son of a king or a queen. And if you wanted to have that leadership, you killed your mother or your father. That was leadership back then. Now, that was society and its organization. But 300 years ago, we started to see a new form of economy take place. That was the Industrial Revolution, and that economy was built on industry and commerce. And leadership changed there from a leadership that was inherited to one that's I call power-based. You had the power. You were elected. You were the boss. You had the ability to create your own business with your own money, and you became the boss, and you therefore had the power. And the power meant that you could say what you wanted and do what you wanted, and if people weren't happy, tough, go work somewhere else. That was the end of that story. It was based on power. You didn't have to trust the person. You just got the job done. That was before unions. That was before organized labor. That was before the life we know as we know today. But the context of leadership is still, for most of our organizations, that it's based on power. I'm the boss. Now, whether you're the top boss or the middle boss or the small boss, you're the boss, and it's often based on power. What we've seen in the last 30 years is, again, a change in society and in the way the economy is driven. And I think that this economy is based on creation and communication. And the leadership in that economy is based on values and common values. Now, again, if you look at what you do in your jobs every day, you're creating things, you're communicating with people, you're bringing things together. And for that to work well, you have to share certain things with people. There's no hierarchy involved. It's not power, although it can be, but it's not about that. If you look at your contacts and your networks, you share common values. So the leadership happens by trust that you give the people, by the support that they give you, by the self-confidence. That's why social networks, and if you recall what we said in the beginning of this conference, of the words that we use to describe social networks and the fundamental needs it addressed, that's where values are. How do these people act? And the crisis we're living today in our societies, and I'm talking in North America, towards politicians, business people, even our sports leaders, our crisis of values. I don't know about you, but in Quebec and Canada, the trust in our politicians is, next to nothing. And I ask this question all over the world. Politicians are not trusted anymore. But it's a tragic thing when we think that these people are making decisions right now about today and for our future, and they're the people we trust less in our values. That's scary. They're still on power-based. They're being elected, so therefore they have the power to decide. Obviously, we're not changing the world as we snap our fingers, but that kind of leadership based on values is what's transforming our world. And that's one of the reasons why social networking is transforming leadership in an organization, because those networks are based on shared values, on shared ideas. And it can be for just one project or one concept or one idea that you're sharing with people, and your values might be different than something else. But the values you have for that thing are shared, are put in common, and make you a better person, if I can say it that way, whether a personality or better in your work or in what you're undertaking. Let's look at an example of a company called, you might know this company called Zappos. Zappos, as you may know, sells mostly shoes. They sell shoes online. It's a .com company. Some of the results in 1999, their sales were $1.6 million. In 2009, 10 years after, $1.1 billion in US dollars. That's an incredible growth in 10 years, ladies and gentlemen. Can you imagine managing this company? Can you see the growth? 1.6 billion, 1.1 billion in 10 years. Imagine what it means in terms of hiring, of processes, of organization. It's unimaginable. But one of the things Zappos had in their fundamental beliefs from the beginning is that people were the organization. Products could always be sold by somebody else. It made no difference. The service and the product can always be copied. But people were fundamentally what made the wealth of this organization. And that's, to me, my fundamental belief is that the wealth of an organization is in between people's ears. That's all there is. The rest, products, services, be good at what you do, but people are good at what you do. That's all an organization is. And so Zappos asked, if you go look at them online, they have visits of their company and stuff. It's great to be able to do that. But go click online on Zappos and see they're very generous with their information on who they are, what they do, their philosophies. They've asked their employees through this growth to come up with, what are some of our guiding principles? Who should we be? What are some of the conducts that should guide our growth? And this is what employees came with, not some consultants in an office with management. 10 core values of Zappos. This is as it is on their website. Deliver wow through service. Impress customers. And you can only deliver wow when you live also yourself in a wow environment as an employee. If you're excited, if you're thrilled, if you feel you have a possibility to do things and to impress clients, then you can deliver wow through service. In a company that's grown from 1.1 million to 1.6 million to 1.1 billion in 10 years, you have to embrace and drive change. You can't resist that. You're going to be run over by it. So you have to embrace and drive change. Create fun and a little weirdness. Let's be different. Let's have fun doing this. Otherwise, let's do something else. In that same line, be adventurous, creative, open-minded. You cannot grow a company the way they did without that. Pursue growth and learning. This is about people. You have to grow. You have to learn. You have to develop yourself because a company is people. It's growth and learning. If we grow and learn as individuals, then we grow and learn as a company. Build open and honest relationships with communication. Talk to people, exchange. And in most organizations, I would think one of the greatest pitfalls I've seen in my almost 30 years now of career is it's not even lack of communication. People don't talk to each other. And if they do, they don't listen to each other. They don't understand each other. They exchange words. They don't communicate. So build honest, open and honest relationships with communication. Then obviously they talk about a team and a family spirit. Not just a team spirit, but a family spirit. They really support each other. And on their website, they give you all kinds of examples of how people are a family, in the real sense of a family, of a support, of a more than a partnership, but an emotional bond between themselves, being part of the Zappos family. Do more with less. Be efficient. How can we do better with less? You can always throw money at things, but without going crazy with things, how can we do more with less? How can we be efficient? Be passionate and determined. To me, this talks about heart. This talks about your fundamental passion and who you can be as an individual in this kind of organization. And finally, be humble. And I like that last one. To me, it's in a company that's grown that much, it's easy to become a bit arrogant, to say we're better than everybody else. Be humble. Stay who you are. That's what made us who we are, and that's what will make us remain who we are. Let me give you another example of some of the thinking that's being done out there. I had the chance to work with Quebec's Board of Private Schools, and we've looked at what seems to be aligning itself. It's not the right word, but I have a French word in mind right now. Sorry, dessiner. It's starting to appear right now as school of tomorrow. We're starting to see that students are not all the same because they're the same age. That we knew a long time ago. But we figure that if we group students by interest and abilities, we'll have much more powerful classrooms and empower students much more because they're grouped by interest and abilities, not by age. We also see that networking allows collective work. We can connect with each other because the social networks allow this in our lives. Let's bring this into school. Intelligent tools replace computers. Again, not to be attached to a desk or a room, but having an intelligent mobile tool is replacing computers. This environment of 24-hour, 7 days a week erases the house-school boundaries. My 16-year-old, once again, flunked his high school, I don't know how you say this in English, but in a mathematics exam in third grade of high school. And it happened to me when I was a kid, but I had to go to school. I had physically to every day in summer for a month, I believe, go to school and redo my math classes and do the exam. You think he goes to school? Yeah. He's sitting on his computer doing exams and tests and things like that until his final exam, where there he's going to go to the classroom just for that exam. He's studying on a computer. And so this 24/7 environment makes the house-school boundaries disappear. We also are starting to see that school's a base camp. It's not the only place to learn. And I don't know about you, but often when I have a question, my first answer is internet. What do I learn? And then my contacts, social networks, issues I have, problems, colleagues I want to talk to about some situation I have in my business or in businesses I work with. My network helps me doing that. So same with school. Kids learn in different places in school. They always did, but now because of the networks making it possible, it's even truer. Teachers and students learn within the community. So as a follow-up to what I just said, the community is a place to learn also, where there's exchange of values, of perspectives, of vision, of things that affect and alter our world. That's also where we learn. And finally, what we're seeing is that parents and educators are closer than ever with information technology. It used to be that my parents, or probably your parents, had to go to the school to meet with the teachers. That still happens, but today we exchange, emails on their website with the teachers, the educators, the management of the school on all kinds of topics. We are, in a constant relationship. That doesn't change. It has changed from having to physically go there to being there all the time when we want to. So those networks are creating different kinds of schooling and obviously different kinds of students and different kinds of workers. Now, part of the difficulty with all of what I said. That's a lot of, in the 45 minutes I've been talking or so. It's a lot of information, and we're coming to a close in a few minutes. But we're looking at all of these changes and all of this impact, and one of the difficulties is how do we do that? And the problem is that you and I, we're not wired for change. We're wired for continuity. We're wired to recognize things. That's how our brain works. Let me give you an example. You recognize this gentleman, obviously, Barack Obama. If you look at this picture, besides the fact it's up and down, anything grasp your mind here? You might see something's a bit strange. Well, let me show you the same picture the other way around, not upside down, but the way up. You obviously see that, the eyes and the mouth on the right-hand side picture are upside down. Let me go back to the picture of the previous one. You see there's something wrong, but never as wrong as this. Once again, something's strange in the picture, but never as strong as this. Your mind is wired to put things in the way that makes sense. It's your animal brain, there's a word for that, I forget, that is able to put things to recognize easily friendly or friends or foes. It's useful in the forest to distinguish a friendly face or an enemy, an animal from a man. And so your brain is wired to put things in a way that works. That's how you do things. So you and I, we're wired that way. So when we're talking about fundamental changes, about changing organization and the way we operate, we're looking more at just content. We're looking more than just processes and organizations and changing, a little bit of this and that. We're looking at fundamental ways of changing the way we lead organization and what we expect from people who lead us and what we do as we work together. And so it's really, a transformation, not just a change. And so I believe that the leadership we need to go from is one that's basically based on what I call a castle leadership, where, if you're the king or the queen of a castle, you can put up and down your drawbridge, and you let people who you want in or out. You have control over your environment. It's a community that is under your control. And everybody can have their own control and have their own castle and decide who they're going to exchange with. That world is gone. I believe that we have to go from a castle leadership to what you call a network leadership, of open doors, of bridges that are down. And so that allows people to communicate, to exchange, to develop together. And that requires a different state of mind. It's a state of mind that might be the one that we're looking at when we're looking at the Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. The Kalahari Desert is a huge place, and the Bushmen story is, I believe, our story. To make it short, the Bushmen are probably, that's what anthropologists are thinking, they're the world's ancestors. We are DNA related to the Bushmen, every one of us. They believe they're the first humans on Earth. And for thousands of years, they have roamed the Earth very freely in these little teams like we saw earlier. Being free to exchange, there is no, they exchange gifts, they have communities, they're very free, very mobile, they change places where the food is. They exchange information by sitting together and talking about where might be the next animal they'll kill. Men and women have the same status in the Bushman's organization, different jobs, different tasks, but there's no glass ceiling in the Bushmen's lives. Their villages also traditionally are very small, about 10 huts, very close together. Their doors are turned towards each other so that they can see each other and communicate and exchange. They have common stoves so they can cook together and build things together. And so in the Bushman's tradition, when you receive something from someone, you have to give something to someone in exchange. It's an ongoing process between the Bushmen. But that's changed in the last 50 years or so. The Bushmen have become sedentary. The world around them has changed. Cities have grown, and their territory has shrunk, and their way of living has changed fundamentally. One of the things we notice in the Bushman story is that their villages, when it used to be very small, they're now about 10 times bigger, not by numbers of houses, by space. They're much farther apart. And now because they're sedentary and they raise goats and they herd animals, they have possessions. And because they have possessions, they don't want others to see. So their huts are not, the doors of their huts are not turned towards one another anymore, but turned so that the others don't see what's in their hut. They don't have common stoves anymore. So all of the traditions of speaking together has disappeared. They have elected chiefs to make decisions for them. They don't have common decisions anymore. And so that's why I say their story is our story, because when they had nothing, they shared everything. And when they have something, they stopped sharing. And so it's the same with our organizations. When we start organizations, when we build things, and you look at the projects you might have done in your own organizations, you do it without any sense of, hierarchy, or we're in this together, and you share information as it goes. But as we grow an organization and we start having job descriptions and positions and business cards, and we start having things, and then we want to stay to these things, and what made it possible for the organization to grow stops growing at that time. So that's the Bushman story, and it's, I believe, our story. So in closing, let me ask you a few questions about your leadership, and to ask yourselves about leadership, not necessarily your own, although you can certainly do that, but the leadership of your organization. Concerning your vision, what will be your role as leaders in the next few years? What role will you take? How will you act? What will you do? How will it be different than today? What will be the changes you'll make happen? What is the transformation that's needed in your organization? Competencies. What will employees and managers of the future be in your organization? Not what do they need to do. How do they need to be? Who will they be? Segmentation. You have different groups, different populations. How will you adapt to the practices and needs of your various populations? And we all know in our organizations today that we have different age groups. We have our seniors and our baby boomers, and we have the Xers and the Yers and whoever else is coming afterwards. If you're not close to retirement and you're in HR function, you'll be managing these differences for the years and years to come. So how would you adapt your practices to the needs of these various populations? Learning. What methods will you use to accelerate learning and performance? What tools will you use? Will you adapt new technologies, new ways of doing things? How will you manage in the content, the talent to distinguish you from others? What will make you as an organization different? Why will people work for you? What will you do for them? And how will you use emerging technologies to be at the forefront? How will you make that happen? And I've given you some examples to do that. So I think that it's time to change our perspective. And one final exercise on the difficulty of changing our perspective comes from a sociology teacher who asked his students to punctuate this sentence: a woman without her man is nothing. Please punctuate the sentence. Here's what most students did. A woman without her man is nothing. Okay? Here's a vision of some women. A woman without her man is nothing. It is not the same sentence. And that's what I say. We need to change our perspective. We need to change the way we see things. It's not, both because things are changing and the context is changing. We need to change the way we see things. So it's not an easy exercise to do, but it's one we need to do. And so maybe a little tool I can give you in concluding this webinar is to analyze in your organization where your cursor is. If you look at traditional leadership and the content I gave you about contract and control and constraint and conform, to a new style of leadership, the emerging leadership based on trust and support, self-discipline and challenge, what do you situate yourself there? Look at the elements that guide your organization and see, are we more contract-based or trust-based? Are we more control-based or self-discipline-based? So do that exercise. I think you might find it useful. It's not just the two words, contract or trust or control and self-discipline, but it's the things that you'll put behind there, and try to see where's your cursor. Because, to end, you're familiar with, this concept of empowering people. I have a strong problem with that, empowering people. People are powerful. What is this thing about empowering people? People are powerful. They raise their families. They pay their, bills. They're citizens and, involved in their community. They coach little league teams. They're powerful people. But they come in an organization and what, flat brainwave? It doesn't make sense. I think the problem with organizations is that we prevent people from being powerful. So if you want to empower people, let them be powerful by removing things in your organization that prevent them from being powerful. Give them the trust and the support and the self-discipline context, and challenge them to be who they are. There's a lot of examples out there that, have I had time, I could have gone into to illustrate what some organizations are doing. This is not, again, this is not a fad, but the social networking and social media is fundamentally altering the way people exchange with each other and the freedom they have in doing that. And if they don't find it in their organization, that will be the end of that organization, I believe, in time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what I wanted to share with you. I thank you very much for your attention. I assume you're still all on the line, and I'll turn it back over to Shauna.
We've got a few questions for you. So one of the questions that came in is, obviously there's different generations in the workforce right now. So how does this philosophy and transformation impact the different generations working together? They obviously have different work ethics, whether that's the Gen X or the baby boomers. Do you have any perspectives there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I addressed this a little bit when I talked to different activities to address your different populations. It's not going to be the same for everyone, and that's part of the challenge in organizations today is that we have different populations. We have our veterans who are, we call them that way, but our older generations in their 60s who are challenged by the changing world. How can you help these guys make that? Some organizations make them mentor for younger people, but in the content. And we have mentors of the younger generation that mentor the older generation in these new technologies and new ways of doing things. So you have to find challenges that are adapted to your different populations. Organizations used to manage people like they were all the same. That's finished. And so one of the challenges in the HR resource and people in that field will be to find segmentations of activities. So I don't have a down-pat answer for that. It requires adaptation to the various populations. But the truth is that we have people who are looking for an environment that's very controlled because that's been like that all their way. And then we have in the same organization younger generation who want no control at all. That's not good either. So you have to find balances between that, and well, that's out at hand.
Great, thank you. We have one come in regarding the importance of succession planning. You touched a bit upon it on one of your slides that pretty much in the U.S., succession planning is most commonly done at the leadership level. Yep. Do you see, from your experience, more companies expanding this initiative since retention and talent management are priorities right now for corporations and CEOs?
Yes, very much so. First, because the older generation is, the ones who built the organizations in the last 20, 30 years are on their way out. The younger generations are the one coming in. So we see a lot of these high potential programs that didn't exist that much 15 years ago. So there are some processes and programs in place to try to identify who's the next generation. Then you have example like Southwest Airlines, where the staff hires their own staff. So if you're a pilot, you hire your own pilots because you're going to work with these people. What values do they share? What experience do they have? Do I want to work with these people? The luggage handlers hire the luggage handlers. The maintenance people hire the maintenance people and follow them through. So they're supported by human resources in doing that, but it's controlled by them and decided by them.
Great. Well, that is all the questions we have. So with that, I'd like to thank our audience today for participating in our presentation with Jocelyn. Jocelyn, if you can just advance the slides just to give folks our contact information. We do have a ton of information on the Technomedia website at technomedia.com that talks about best practices in talent management. You can download complimentary white papers and articles and case studies. If you'd like a copy of today's presentation deck, please email me, Shauna Berthold at technomedia.com. If you have any other personal questions or follow-up you'd like to send to Jocelyn, please feel free to reach out to him directly. His contact information is there on screen for you as well, along with his website. So with that, we want to thank you again for your attendance, and we look forward for you to join us in our future webinar series. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.